Watch yourself. You're not Steve Rogers.
You're right. I'm not.
Anthony, the last time you and I got to chat, we covered everything from New Orleans cuisine to Winston-Salem architecture. Now this movie's about to come out, and we got to focus. And so I'm asking you to explain to all of our viewers, since we last saw Sam and Joaquin, Captain America and Falcon now, what have y'all been up to, and what is your duo like going into Brave New World?
Well, Sam and Joaquin are still working as a team outside of the U.S. government. So basically, they're agents for hire. And that's where this movie kicks off. Ross calls in Sam Wilson after doing a project for the U.S. government, and he asks Sam if he would be willing to bring the Avengers back, which is odd because Ross is the one who ripped apart the Avengers with the Sokovian Accords in Civil War.
That's where we enter this, and I got to see about 30 minutes of the movie since the last time we talked, and it's so fun. There's comedy, but there's great action in it too. And your suit, the upgrades that you got courtesy of the Genius Bar in Wakanda, it's right. Like next level stuff. Like, what is that like for you as an actor to kind of get to inhabit that?
Well, it's hard because it's all like CGI and fake stuff. So they're like, oh, your wings come out and they're bigger. So it's like, whoa, it's not like we have the wings there. So you have to wait to see the movie to see what it is they're describing. But it was really cool, man. Like I said, this movie is about Sam taking on the mantle and finally accepting the idea of him being Captain America. And you see that all through this movie with the suit, with the action sequences, with him going against Red Hulk. He's really just, taken over the mantle and made Captain America his own.
I never thought about that from the action perspective. Every time you get a cool suit upgrade, it's almost like you, as the performer, have to work harder to make that believable.
You never know. They're like, oh, the shield is glowing. And it's like, oh, you never know what that'll look like until you see the movie.
It feels like we're getting into like a new golden era of these movies because obviously we got this one kicking things off, and I've been looking forward to Valentine's Day for the first time in forever thanks to this film.
Right.
And then we have Thunderbolts coming out. Then we get X-Men. Then we get Fantastic Four. Of all of those groups, is there one that you would like to interact with the most as Captain America?
I think X-Men would be the furthest reach. All my friends are in Thunderbolts, so I would definitely want to do Thunderbolts. Just the idea of me and all those dudes together would be a train wreck of epic proportions. So I would love for that to happen.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're not sure where Bucky is as this movie starts. I asked Danny Ramirez, where's Bucky? And his quote back to me was, who cares? Do you have anything you want to add to that?
We have no idea. I think he's still in Wakanda. I have no idea where he is. Last time I heard, he was getting nominated for Oscars and so he could be anywhere.
He's very mercurial,
right.
That guy. Are you going to be that dude that sneaks into the movie opening weekend to like watch certain scenes and see how the crowd reacts to it?
I'll say this, every Marvel movie I've been in, I've seen probably 10 to 15 times opening weekend, especially Endgame, because I just wanted to hear the audience's reaction. It was such that movie was such an emotional roller coaster. It was crazy to me every time I heard the different reactions from the audience. I want to do the same with this. I want to see how people respond or if they respond because the movie's so good and it's so emotionally and action-packed. I'm interested to see how people react.
Since when were they red?
This is so much fun for me, and this is a great trivia question. I didn't realize this. You've worked with Anthony Mackie before, about 20 years ago.
I didn't realize that I'd worked with Anthony before. He reminded me when we got on the set, but we never were in the same space at the same time. He was in a different part of the movie. We never worked together, really.
So this is your first time getting to interact with him, and now all of a sudden, he's Captain America. You're President of the United States. How does that power dynamic work for you?
Well, he got the right part, and I got the right part. I was glad to have an opportunity to work with him and to be part of this Marvel universe, something that I've never done before, but looked like fun. He's part of the reason it looked like fun is because he was making it look like fun. It's not. It's work. It's real. It's a real movie. It's real movie making. But it is fun to do because there's a lot of imagination left unimagined. And the characters really are unimaginable until you get there and see the scope of the landscape and the freedom and the variety of the things that live there.
I mean, one of the things I never imagined I'd see on screen and look as incredible as it does is a character like Red Hulk. So I'm curious for you in that transformation, are you involved in that at all as an actor? Do you have like the tennis balls all around? Are you wearing a suit, or is it how is that behind the scenes process of bringing him to life?
Honestly, I don't remember. They said, this is the scene in which you turn into the Red Hulk. I said, okay, great. Where do I go? What do I do? And they said, well, you turn into the Red Hulk. I said, yeah, but what do I do? They said, you turn into the Red Hulk. Oh, okay. And I turned into the Red Hulk, and they said, okay.
Cut, we got it.
Yeah. Can I do it again? Oh, no, that was fine. That was fine. So it was an amusing day at the office.
It sounds like it was. I mean, have you seen it on the big screen yet? Have you seen a finished version of what that looks like in the film?
Yes. Yeah.
It's going to blow people's minds.
It blew mine.
Do you have any designs? It's going to be a popular toy when it comes out. Do you yourself have any desire to have a Red Hulk toy or any other action figure of yourself?
No.
I thought I might get that answer.
Next question.
Well, your next question is, so I wanted to watch something that starred you last night in preparation for this interview, and I put on Clear and Present Danger, and it's one of those films that it's fun to see you kind of mirrored because you're playing Jack Ryan in that, and he was sort of like the ultimate Boy Scout, like Captain America. So is it more fun to come in and bark at the President of the United States, or is it more fun to play the President of the United States, getting some pushback from a Boy Scout?
It is. It's fun to be part of the either side of it. It's fun to pretend to be the president. Who doesn't walk around thinking, if I was president? The other part of it is, how does this pushback feel emotionally? What is the audience going to feel from this? How are we going to direct the audience in the right direction? Really create behaviors that they recognize and emotionally understand. And they take their real life experience and knit that into the fantasy that you're part of. And it gives it a real context, an emotional context. So the real part, the parts that are not outright fantasy have to be, and even the parts that are fantasy, have to feel real. It has to be. You have to protect the material by treating it as though it were Shakespeare.
Captain America caught without his wings.
I guess I'll just start with the easy blanket question. What excited you about playing Sidewinder in this movie?
It excited me to bring a new character into the MCU on the big screen. For me to do something new and different that I haven't done before is always exciting. And then culling on what I need to know from the comics and integrating that into my being to help me guide me as to who this man is and how he got where he's going, whether it's spoken in words or not, it's part of the entity that I create. This is one of my favorite things to do ever. And to be in the Marvel universe has been anticipated by me for a long period of time.
Yeah, I think it's been anticipated by a lot of fans too. What was it like? Like, is it a phone call you get? Is it somebody on your team telling you, "Hey, the MCU's interested"? Like, what was that day like for you as a fan of this stuff?
My team tells me nothing until it actually comes to fruition. And so, there was all this fan castings around Professor X, and I knew, and I asked my people, does Marvel know about it? They said they track everything. They know. They see the social media. They know. And then as I started to scratch my head and think about that, and it has been done, I kept thinking, about who's done it before and how that looked. And with this, my imagination soared and ran wild because there's no one who's done this before. And to me, to be an original is really important. That day was like heaven. First call I made was to my eldest daughter, who's a Marvel freak. She loves Captain America, and she knows everything about it. And so I called her, and she gave me a bunch of cliff notes to say, if you haven't seen this, see this, see this. She sent me really specific screenshots of scenes. You don't need to see this whole movie again because I know you saw it. Just watch this one scene. It's going to inform you. And so I was like a kid in a candy store. That's what it's like. I mean, to me, it was a phone call that came to me, and I went, you got to be kidding me. Because when you have a dream for a long time, whether you know it or not, you are inviting that dream to come true. And it never leaves you in your day. It's been 5 years, dude. 5 years. It never leaves your consciousness. It's going to come. It's going to come. And that's the way I think, because I'm a positive thinker. And so when that day finally came, I went, wow. Okay, let me tell you a quick story. 10 years ago, my eldest daughter gave me a Captain America hoodie with the face covered and the eyes cut out for Christmas. And I thought, what the hell is this? And I hadn't viewed Captain America in such a long time. And I put it on and I ran around the house and played with the girls and scared them and all that. Now they're in their 20s, right? And my second daughter sent me a photograph of that picture the other day and said, Papa, Shane gave this to you, but you've been inviting it ever since. This is the truth. So I screamed, jumped up and down, and went, we hadn't even made a deal. And you don't even know if the deal is going to happen or if it's going to make you happy or not. It didn't matter to me because there's people I want to work with in this business. And it was Kevin Feige, Nate Moore, Louis D'Esposito. And it was this team of filmmakers that I desired to be with.
It's such an inspiring story you just told, because, the fans wanted you in something like this for a long time. I think the world did, but then to hear that you sort of manifested this out of thin air as well.
I couldn't get it off my mind 2 or 3 times a week. And I was asked a question at some Comic-Con or somewhere in regard to Professor X. And I started to think about it and I went, I'm an active dude. And I made reference to, I know Professor X winds up in a wheelchair, but I couldn't envision that. And, and that was okay. So then I had to envision something else. Because my answer to that question from a fan at this Q&A was, look at me. I'm virile, I'm physical, I move, I'm an athlete. And look what comes to me, Sidewinder. Like, this dude is a bad, you know what I mean? So dreams come true. And the dream of this movie has come true. You've had to wait, because with all movies, we make them better, we make them better, we make them better. And this is what happens. You take the movie, you look at it, and you go, our original intention was this, we can do better, we can do better, we can do better. You've waited a little bit, this movie's going to knock your socks off.
I got to see some footage. I was lucky enough to do that. And the first thing that struck me when you're on camera is, I know you when you play a villain as this more, a quiet sort of filled with stoicism sort of character. What you just said, you get to be physically active here. Like, you're kicking some ass in this. So what was that preparation like to get ready for a role like a Sidewinder?
Oh my goodness. I have a physical regimen every day that is inclusive of swimming, cycling, and Pilates. But I tell you, the fight game is a different game. You get in there, you sweat. You've got to, because it's you're sitting on a bike, you're riding. When I'm riding on the street, I'm really kind of aware, which is why I like to ride and cycle on the street. When you're on a stationary bike, you can zone out. People zone out on their phone and everything else. I do not. So what I'm saying is, you have to use your brain, because everything is counted, everything is moves, and you're going to miss at a certain point, and he's going to miss. So you're going to get each other. But the idea is not to hurt each other. So it's in juxtaposition to what your emotion is, right? You have to pull. You can't, you have to have the emotion. You want to kill this guy, but you can't chop his head off, right? So, you know what I mean? So it's really, the antithesis of those emotions that go on, but you got to prove it physically. 5, 6, 7 days every day in the gym with fight doctors, and doing it with cats who do it better than your fellow actor's going to do it. So you get beat up a little bit, and then you got to beat up a little bit, and then you got to find your, and you got to get there, right? So even if you make a wrong move, you got to make a correction and correct it. And then you can't, like, you hear all these stories about actors who shoot guns, because you don't have, you're rehearsing without any kind of, you're not using a machine gun. So like, what's wrong with that picture? You can't. You can't. So actors get on with the camera with the machine gun or a gun, and boom, 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 boom. They're saying boom while they're acting. Well, you can't do that. The gun says boom. So you got to think and channel what it would be like in real life, and separate yourself from the fact that that gun is not actually firing off rounds. So it takes a very focused concentration and a mental agility that's important for you to master, so that it's in your eyes, even down to, I just saw you blink, even down to, the gun is going to give you a kickback. And I'm so specific. I want to feel that little bit of, you got to create that as an actor. So it's a different world, and I love it, baby. Look forward to me kicking more and more and more and more ass.
I never won Sidewinder not in an MCU movie now. This is so exciting. Is there a history or anything you can share with us about your and Sam Wilson's relationship in this movie? It felt like, from what I was able to see, more than meets the eye, but I don't know what you can tell us.
I can tell you that it is more than meets the eye, because it's a wonderful thing that I play Seth Boker, the head of the Serpent Society, who happened to, in the comic, and I take all the information I have and I cull it through my being, was an economics professor. But in this, he's a mercenary. So, and Sam is in the military. So my brain, and my imagination runs wild. There's obviously, I think, a connection that has not been cultivated yet, because we're just getting into it. But I would wish for, because if you look at our body language, and if you've seen the movie, right? You've seen the film, you look at our body language, it could almost be adversarial friendly. We're in that alley, we walk away, we just talking to each other like human beings. But when I'm after him, I'm trying to kill him. So that says to me, there's more than meets the eye in their relationship. They've come in contact with each other more than one time, and we hope that they'll come in contact with each other many more times for our fans and our viewers in the story of Captain America.
So I got one more question for you. Now you just get to kind of play in your sandbox, in your wheelhouse. You're running around on Christmas morning with the Captain America's hoodie on. In your dream scenario, what other villains from the MCU would you get to team up with as Sidewinder someday? Where, I can't wait to, the Avengers and everybody, all the good guys get to team up. How about the bad guys teaming up?
Well, that is, like, in many ways, is the thinking. I'm already with the bad guys. So I think the opposite of that, right? Like, my thinking is, the guy was an economics professor, very close to the best, very straight-laced. Let's see some of that story, a piece of it. And then let's see him be Sidewinder and be a badass. And then let's see him maybe switch and team up with the good guys, right? Like, that's something you wouldn't expect. And that's just in my imagination, because I have a really big imagination. Wouldn't that be kind of incredible? Like, have you ever seen that in the Marvel Universe, where a bad guy goes, hey, he switches allegiances? And that's my favorite kind of character to play. Someone who switches allegiances for a reason, and allows you to trust them for a reason. And he's on the other side now, and uses his powers and his intellect and his physicality to try to bring us back to good. That would be interesting to me.
Tell me I don't make your old gear look brand new.
Who's saying that?
Everybody.
Danny, it's great to get a chance to talk with you about this movie again. If you could just set the stage for everybody, as far as, like, when fans go to see this movie, what is your relationship with Sam in that moment? And do we know where Bucky is at the beginning of Captain America: Brave New World?
Do we care where Bucky is my question. I'm kidding. No, we're a couple years after the show, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Joaquin and Sam have developed their relationship further in regard to a partnership of cash and checks and kicking ass, and so they're a little bit more settled into their dynamic, and I think you feel that, you feel the familiarity within them, and also I think it sets the stage for, like, a really, really beautiful journey through not only this film but hopefully beyond.
Since the last time I was able to speak with you about this, I got to see about 30 minutes of footage from the film. And one of the things that impressed me the most as a comedian is that you're kicking ass in this movie, but you're also cracking jokes. And my man, in the theater I was in, they're landing. So, like, how cool is that for you to get to be, like, an action hero, but you're also, like, the comic relief? And we know how much Marvel movies mean to folks who want to get a chuckle as well as a lot of great action.
Fair. Well, no, that means the world to me because I feel I'm accidentally funny, and the times that I am funny, I feel like people are laughing not with me but at me at like either something I've done. So you telling me that is great. I tell my team before, I'm like, just don't send me any comedy. Like I'm gonna not be able to land the jokes. And if I mean a lot of those are understanding the character, the film itself. Julius gave me freedom to truly just feel out some spaces and workshop some of the comedy. There's honestly, wasn't expecting that compliment. That's sick, dude. I feel good about that.
Trust me, man. They were laughing with you, not at you this time.
Oh, hell yeah, let's go.
And it was just fun to be locked in because you and Sam have a real like Butch and Sundance kind of vibe, and you can chart that throughout cinema history where it's like a great buddy duo. And now you have this like huge mission that you got to go on. So when we look at the stunts, like, what is there a particular sequence or something with like you as Falcon flying around that you're most excited about once folks check this film out?
Yeah, I feel like you've seen some of these sequences and some teasers here and there, but there is one that specifically is gonna blow people's minds. Like it's nuts. I just saw the movie by myself, so I didn't get to see if the jokes were landing or not. Like 10 days ago, 11 maybe. Beyond it.
By yourself? Nobody else was in the theater?
Well, actually, for the sequence that I'm talking about, some people were like, we need to watch your reaction while you watch it for the first time. And I was like, interesting you say that. Why? And I saw it, and I was like, I get it. I get why people that have been working on the film for so long are just upset. It's gonna be great, man. It's gonna be great.
So you're going to be that dude who, like, opening weekend, you're sneaking into some theaters and you're sitting in the back, if you can find a seat, and you're watching the audience react to this stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm going to go in there, like, full, like, just observing people, soak it in, and then just seeing what worked, that the timing was right, when people adjust themselves in the seat and why, and so, like, just kind of studying people. I'm going to go in there, actually, dressed in all black, just, like, underneath the screen, night vision goggles on, observing.
You're really taking this stealth stuff seriously, which I love. You're really sort of still in character. And I want to ask you about that because you play Falcon, Sam plays Captain America, and everybody I've talked to from this movie, it seems like y'all were just making a fun flick, and that Julius Onah, your director, gave y'all the freedom to kind of play around with maybe the script, the lines, and really feel out your character. Is that how you felt on set?
Julius had a very specific vision, and I think him and Kramer both put that backpack on and carried that part of the film. But for us, he wanted to create more so like a really nuanced relationship between Sam and I, and Sam and everyone else that we interact with in the film. And so the comps that he gave us, like the film comparisons that he gave us, were ranging from Network to Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance to Memories of Murder. And specifically with the South Korean films that he gave us, balance that tone of the comedy but the intense groundedness and reality, and almost like it's the perfect balance. And so those are the ones that I drew most from for Joaquin. I was like, reality doesn't mean that it's super just dreary the whole time, but also comedy doesn't mean that it's not reality. So there was this place that I found justification of almost every single one of those lines. I'm almost allergic to delivering something in a way that like feels forced or inauthentic just for the sake of the tone or the genre. And I think that's why comedy has previously scared me, because I'm like, if I don't justify the comedy, I'm gonna look at myself in the mirror later and be like, you're fake.
You're not a fake, man, I promise you. My last question for you is, by my math, it's been 17 years since we kind of kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Do you remember the first movie of that you saw in the theater? And did you think like, hey, maybe someday I'm going to be a part of this? Because it was kind of right when you were coming up in the world of acting.
I was still in high school or middle school. I saw Iron Man in theaters, and it was, I had no idea that I'd ever even get the chance to, one, act, but the sheer wit and charisma that our DJ has and had in that movie, I was like, oh, this is how you establish a franchise. And looking back on it now and having rewatched it several times, and before the show, rewatched all films and TV series, and I go back and I'm like, there's some magic in that I think is unexplainable and is what sets up 17 years later, still to this day, like that energy that he captured in that opening sequence, really.
What do we know?
There were 5 shooters. This was a coordinated terrorist attack, sir.
It is such a pleasure to get to talk to you because I've seen you in some amazing movies and shows the last few years, and I'm just wondering what it's like for you as a performer stepping onto the set of like this huge Marvel movie. What was it different? Was it what you expected?
It was incredible. Honestly, a dream come true. Very different from what I've done before, which is like, my goal as an actress is always to do different things, different characters, different stories, different genres, as long as it has what I call a spark, this feeling of excitement to do it. I'm in. As different as it can be, the better. And it was definitely a whole new experience to get into the MCU world for the first time for me. And I didn't know what to expect. And surprisingly, it felt, because of the people and because of the warmest welcoming, supernatural. At the same time, incredible. And I had my moments that I was like, whoa. But it was so welcoming and pleasant, honestly, from day one, from the first training session that I had.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because you play a Black Widow in this movie, which means you have a history of being a trained assassin. So was the physical prep, like, can you walk us through that? Like, how intense was that?
Pretty intense. It was a few months before, like 2 or 3 months, getting into it 5 times a week. With a trainer, no matter where I was in the globe. And like I always say, I love sport, I love working out, but this is a whole new level for me, at least. I appreciate everyone that do it on a daily basis all the time. So it was just incredible. And also, of course, like a certain diet that works with that to gain weight and muscle. And it was also really fun. And like you said in the beginning, very different from things I've done before, but it also really helped me to get into the role, to get into the character, to get into the world of the MCU, even before we started filming. And then when we got to Atlanta, where we filmed the movie, I also had like the stunt rehearsals for all the action sequences that you will all watch. So it was honestly an incredible and unique experience. Yeah.
I mean, you lost me at 5 times a week. As soon as you said that, I was like, yeah, that seems like a lot of work, man.
Thank you, Mark. You would be surprised. It's fun, yeah.
It does seem like a big family. When I've gotten a chance to talk to anybody related to this movie, I've been lucky to have the opportunity a few times, and it does seem like everybody had such a great time making this movie. And then I got to see some footage recently, and it's like, whoa, you are such a badass in this. How would you describe your character to somebody who didn't know a lot about this world going in?
So Ruth Batsaraf, she's an ex-Black Widow. She's working for the government with the legend Harrison Ford. And she is an ex-Black Widow, so she's very, very tough. She's very, very mission-oriented, very eyes on the ball, very straightforward, will do everything for what she's been told to do. Very loyal. But at the same time, because of her past, that's my interpretation, then she has a true sense for people's ability to change, which I think also goes very well with Mackie's character, with Sam Wilson. So I really enjoyed also playing with this duality, with the toughness that she has, but the good heart also that she has within her.
That's what I love about it, because from what I was able to see, like, I have no idea which way your character is going to go. Like, it's so that's one of the keys I'm looking forward to when I actually get to see the full movie. I'm curious from your standpoint, like, you're making a movie like this. What was it like to get that call to like join the MCU? Was that something you were expecting, or was it just completely out of the blue?
Complete surprise. Honestly, I had a Zoom meeting with our brilliant director, with Julius. We had Zoom. I think I was in England. Maybe I think he was in the US. So we had our Zoom. And we just talked. We talked a lot about life, where we come from, cinema, films we like, life in general. We also talked about the movie. He couldn't say much back then, so we talked very briefly. And then it was over. And no reading, no nothing. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I think it was a few days after, maybe more, I got a call that I have a part in Captain America and I play Ruth. And I was shocked and very excited. I remember exactly where I was and how excited and I was and what I felt. So that's kind of like how lucky I was to get it.
That's really awesome. And I look at this as a way to, I mean, you always have your phases with like the Marvel movies, but it seems like we're entering into a new golden age of them because you have Thunderbolts coming out and X-Men and Fantastic Four and all that stuff. Just like, what would be your dream scenario? Is there like an MCU character that you're like, ooh, I'd love to have some screen time with that person?
You know what? Out of solidarity for Black Widows, and also because I'm such a fan, I'd love to work and also meet Florence Pugh and maybe be like best friends. That's a goal. So yeah, I think this can work. So why not?
Sign me up for that movie. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I think like when you look at the Marvel movies, I think that we have a certain expectation of what they're going to be on screen, but also what it's like to work for Marvel, even though like I've never been in a Marvel movie. What was the most surprising thing that you think would surprise most people about being in a Marvel movie? Something that surprised you that you weren't expecting?
Not that I expected the other way, but the amount of like kindness and the ability to collaborate. I remember getting the script and having thoughts or ideas or questions, and I wasn't sure if I can. It's such a massive world, the MCU, and I'm like a small part of it eventually. And they were so open to hear and to talk about things. And it was really, I was blown away by that. So was like, yeah, an exciting thing.
Do you remember the first MCU movie you saw? Or was there a particular movie earlier in the lore that you saw and you're like, oh man, that's the one. I got to be in something like this someday.
Winter Soldier for me, that's like my favorite Marvel film. I was like really moved watching it. And I mean, I was so blown away by also the action it has, but also the grounding and the character driven that it is. And I want to hope that our film is also in that kind of like vibes. That's what I think. And I hope the fan will feel as well. So I'm really excited because this is really a movie that I saw and I was like, wow, I wish, like years ago, right? I was really young. And now, few years later.
Whatever this is, Cap, be careful.
Julius, it's great to see you again. It's great to get a chance to talk to you again. Now that we're, a week-ish away from this movie actually being out and being released, I'm just curious, can you set the stage for us as far as where Cap and where Falcon are as we head into Brave New World?
Well, first of all, Mark, great to see you again. Every opportunity to speak with Mark Ellis is a wonderful time. So good to see you. Look, the last time we saw these guys was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the TV series. We're 2 years later, and Sam has now embraced his role as Cap. And we're getting to meet him at a place where he's got a confidence and a swagger, and we get to see how he uses his unique skill sets as our new Cap to really kick ass and take names and to take charge. And likewise, Joaquin is redefining the Falcon, and he's got his own super suit and his own set of wings that he inherited from Sam. And a really great fun, too, of it is the banter and the relationship between them. That was really important to me. Mackie is one of the most charismatic dudes on the planet. Danny is also an incredibly charismatic dude, and the way they interact with each other, it's so much of the fun, I think, of a great Marvel story. And it's just a thrill getting to work with them. So they've been going on these missions now, and they're set up on a mission to go retrieve a canister that has, adamantium in it, which is a very exciting new introduction into the MCU. And after they retrieve that, Sam eventually is brought in front of the new president, Thaddeus Ross, and that sets us in motion for a really exciting, mysterious action thriller that goes to some pretty unexpected places.
Take my money. You already sold the ticket. There you go. It's funny. I was talking with Danny Ramirez not too long ago, and I asked him, where's Bucky, as we start, and his response was, who cares? Do you want to add to that statement?
Well, look, you got Danny Marie. I love that confidence, man. It's the swagger. And I think the confident swagger that these two guys have, which again also goes to unexpected places in their relationship, it just ends up in a way that's very emotionally satisfying. But these movies are fun. We wanted to have fun. Those guys are having fun. And that's pretty infectious.
I was going to ask you about that, just being a director and making a film of this magnitude on this scale with all these giant action set pieces. How were you able to kind of keep that I liken it to like a Butch and Sundance kind of vibe between Falcon and Captain America. And it really feels like they're buddies and they're cracking jokes, but they're kicking ass. How are you able to maintain that sort of intimate feel in a huge movie like this?
There's a couple of ways. First of all, you cast well. So I'm very grateful that those two, had this amazing chemistry that they bring to the screen. It was just fortunate. It's not, nobody knew. I didn't even tell anybody at Marvel that I knew Danny from 10 years ago. So we had some personal history with each other. I don't even think I mentioned them that I also had some connections with Mackie from the past too. So having that trust and having a little bit of history with them was helpful. And then I come from theater. I love to go through a rehearsal process. So we spent time rehearsing, which was an opportunity for the actors to they might know each other personally, but get to know each other as professionals and as collaborators. That trust pays dividends when you see them on screen. And then it's also them getting to know how to work with me. So that was about creating a trust and a comfort. And also when you know the material so well and you know each other so well, then there's more freedom to riff, there's more freedom to experiment. And some of the best moments in this film might just be a little bit of behavior here, a look there, a smile. And those things pay off huge in the movie. So those were the things that I thought about consciously. But it all starts with having two phenomenal actors.
And when we talk about past relationships, I think that extends to some of the characters that we've seen in the MCU before, some of the founding characters that we get to bring back for this film, obviously headlined by Tim Blake Nelson. So can you tell us about his character coming back into the fold after so much time?
Yeah, I mean, look, Samuel Stearns was a man who we got to meet in The Incredible Hulk in 2008. We got to see a little bit of Bruce Banner's gamma-irradiated blood end up in one of his wounds, and then he disappeared into the shadows. And, now we have this story where there's some mysterious happenings going on, and Tim, who is a phenomenal actor, again, another person who comes so prepared and gives you so many colors and textures and just has so much control of both his vocal inflections and his physicality. He just brings a real sense of mystery and surprise to Samuel Stearns. I don't want to say too much about his behind-the-scenes machinations, but what I will say is getting to bring him back in this story also allowed us to emotionally explore some of the things going on, especially with Thaddeus Ross in this film, about what it means to try and rewrite one's legacy, what it means to have somebody's demons of their past come back to haunt them. And what it means to try and see the humanity in each other. So he ends up being this incredible foil, both to Thaddeus and, of course, to our hero, Sam Wilson, Captain America.
So my final question is a little bit of a sidewinder, if you will. I'm curious if you took inspiration from a previous Captain America film, which one is this the most one like? And also, how is this new movie different than any of the previous iterations of a Captain America we've seen before?
Well, look, I make no... I don't try and deny it ever. My favorite Captain America movie and my favorite Marvel movie is Winter Soldier. I think it's a phenomenal piece of work across the board, directing, writing, acting. So I wanted to honor that movie with this film, but I did want to make sure we were venturing off in our own direction. So that was a movie that was inspired also by classic paranoid thrillers, very much specifically The Parallax View and I think 3 Days of Condor. Those were movies I considered, but then I looked at other things. We talked about Day of the Jackal, we talked about Les Samurai, we talked about Point Blank. And then I also wanted to bring in some contemporary influences. And in particular, I looked at Killing of a Sacred Deer, and I also looked at The Great Beauty. And what I wanted to do was take elements from each one of these films, some of the lighting, some of the framing, some of the camera movement, and really create a controlled aesthetic for this film that honored what came in the past, but also was distinct to it. So that was really the approach that I took, and it was a lot of fun, and I think we were able to come up with something that has a texture and a feel and a vibe all of its own that really is a great cinematic introduction to Sam Wilson and our new Captain America.
You want me? Come and get me!
Nate, it's just such a thrill to get to talk to you during this really cool, interesting period in your life, I imagine, too.
Sure.
Yeah, a lot of stuff to talk about. Whenever there's a Marvel movie, right, we know we're going to get some surprises and some cameos and tee up the next movies, in this case, thinking Thunderbolts. But what can you tell fans about what to expect in that vein going into Captain America: Brave New World.
Yeah. Look, without spoiling anything, there are some things that happen in this film that will have ripples going forward. We always love a cameo as long as they feel organic, but I do think we will deliver on the promise of the premise on this one. And I think even in light of all the bells and whistles and the goodies that you're talking about, I think they're gonna walk away having seen a really cool, grounded political thriller. I think we're very careful to not put the cart before the horse. We want to make sure the movie's good, and then you get to sprinkle in the other special sauce that makes it a film that only Marvel can make.
Some of that special sauce and those sprinkles you talk about feel like it impacts this movie, because I got to see about 30 minutes of footage, and I got the political thriller aspect you were talking about. I was blown away by what I saw. And then, I'm thinking like, well, okay, Tim Blake Nelson is back from the 2008 Hulk, and Liv Tyler said she's coming back. So, like, what was it like to have that kind of full circle moment on set here?
Yeah, it's always fun when you can think of a great way to bring somebody like Tim Blake Nelson, who's such an amazing performer, back into the MCU. And it was something that we talked about very early on. Because it was such an interesting place to leave that character in 2008 in that film, and we internally were like, how do we maximize this? Like, what's the best story to tell? And I think we stumbled upon something that I think does a service both to that character's journey and really uses Tim's skills as a performer. And so Samuel Stearns is going to return in a big way, and both what he does in this film and how he looks is so sort of intriguing and horrific and interesting that I think it's going to be sort of a really powerful performance.
Oh, I can't wait. So I'm curious about this next question, because you every time it's a new year, we make resolutions and we want to make life changes and all that stuff. You had a pretty big life change, announcing that you're leading Marvel to produce stuff on your own, and I'm sure it's very exciting for you. Have you had a chance to look back on your career at Marvel and think of like, oh man, that's the memory right there. Like, what an all-time moment that was.
The honest answer is no. I mean, we've been so in the finishing mode for this film and making sure this film is as good as possible, and now getting to talk about this film and hopefully share this movie for the world soon. I don't think I'll have the time to do that until this movie's out, to be honest. But I know in my 15 years, I mean, there's a host of memories that I'm sure will come back to me. And to be honest, it's the people I've gotten to work with, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. I mean, our crews are some of the best in the world, and a lot of those crew members have become friends, like true friends. And I think that, to me, is what I'll remember, even more than the films, which obviously I love. And the truth is, I'm not going far. I'm still going to be a part of the Black Panther film going forward, which I'm really excited about. And I can't imagine not trying to figure out a way to work with Kevin and the team again in the future beyond that.
I actually love hearing that answer, because like, I want you focused on the movie. I don't want you looking back at rose-tinted glasses. Totally. Just as a fan or a producer, however you want to answer it, do you have a favorite maybe moment with Captain America, the character, making the films? What about Captain America stands out to you in the history with the MCU?
Yeah, I mean, what stands out to me about Cap, both in Brave New World and the iterations with Steve Rogers, is there's such an integrity to his character, and there's such a selflessness, and that might sound a bit pat, but he's not Tony Stark, he's not Star-Lord, he's not even T'Challa in a way. Like, there's something about, I always feel like Cap is an underdog. And I'm a sucker for underdog characters. I'm a sucker for characters who are going to put everything on the line, who are constantly outside the system to some degree, and also who aspire to represent something as heady as America or the American dream. Like, that's such a big idea. But both Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson are brave enough to try, and they're not worried about how that might look. I remember initially when I came into Marvel, the idea for Cap, certainly out in the world, was he's a little bit of a Boy Scout, and that was a bad thing, right? It's like, oh, he's so vanilla. Why isn't he edgy like Tony Stark? But I think that can be a good thing. You know what I mean? Integrity and compassion and empathy is a good thing. And so these movies wear their heart on their sleeve a little bit more than some are other ones, but I think that's why people love the character, to be honest.
Put that on the billboard, man. Integrity, empathy, compassion.
Right.
I mean, and we mentioned the Captain America with the Steve Rogers Captain America, and now the Sam Wilson Captain America.
Yep.
How does this movie differ from the other Captain America films that we've seen?
Yeah, I think it differs because Sam's past, it was that of a counselor, right, and an army vet. And so the way he wants to solve problems is through emotion and through connection. You know, I always say, like, if Sam Wilson had his way, he wouldn't have to throw a punch because he'd figure out how to resolve conflict without that. And I think Steve was a little bit more of a soldier in that way, right? Steve was a little bit more of a, I'll just go through you, I'll just keep punching, I can do this all day, right? Sam is, how do I get you to realize that we don't need to fight at all? And I think the way Sam bears the mantle then is a bit different because there's more of a, and not that Steve wasn't human, but there's more of a human connector to the character. And I think when he deals both with characters like Joaquin Torres, who's a bit of a mentee for him, but even, you know, some of the more villainous characters, Sam isn't trying to beat them into submission. He's trying to convince them why they might be wrong. And I think that's why Sam Wilson's Captain America feels so different to me. And that combined with the fact that he is human, he's in more danger all the time, right? Like Steve physically, you kind of go like, he's gonna handle himself. Sam's human. So there's a little bit more of that human frailty that you and I think can identify with. So you can build action and put him at risk in different ways. And let's not forget, he never gave up his wing pack. In fact, he upgraded it. So the way he moves through action is just inherently different. So it is a Captain America movie, but it's an all new Cap, and I think that's what's exciting.
Yeah, some of those upgrades, pretty impressive from what I've seen so far. So. It's more than just like a new iPhone. You know, this is like an exciting time to be Captain America.
Absolutely.
You brought up the new Black Panther movie, Black Panther 3, eventually when we get it. Is there anything you can tell us right now, whether it's a tease or production-wise or anything in that?
No, and not because I'm being cagey. Like we haven't really started, you know, and so it's interesting, and I think it's great. For this reason, you read all the rumors on the internet about casting or villains or whatever, none of that's true, but it is nice that people care about that franchise so much that they're already speculating. You know what I mean? I go, look, our fans are there and they're hungry for a great story. It's now gonna be our job once we get Ryan back from his film, which is coming out soon as well, to really craft a story that capitalizes on that passion. Because going back to Wakanda, and the Black Panther franchise is incredibly exciting. It's really personal for me. It's something that I've lived with for a long time. It's something that Coogler's lived with for a long time. So we want to do it right, but there's nothing to talk about yet just because we haven't started.
I got one more question for you, and I swear, I'm not trying to get you into trouble. You can disavow all information. I'm just curious about the Eternals and if anything from there would factor into Brave New World, or, you know, if we get to see a Harry Styles character again sometime down the road, anything you can tell us in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, look, we love those characters. I certainly love those characters. I think that we want to bring them back, but if and when we do, we want to make sure it's the right vehicle, right? Like, we don't want to rush or assume anything, but I do know they will be back at some point. In what guise, it's hard to say, but if and when they do come back, hopefully audiences will be excited.